Good evening. My name is Nicholas Private, and I will be going over how to use an FAA-approved MEL or minimum equipment list, and how to fly with inoperative equipment with an MEL or without. So, the intro to this lesson is the ability to understand every aspect of an airplane when flying is paramount, especially when emergency or something unexpected happens. Understanding what an MEL is and how to use it will not only keep you out of trouble with the FAA, but can help determine what instruments and equipment can be flown without. Furthermore, understanding how to fly with inoperable instruments and equipment is critical to the safety of the pilot in command and their passengers. So what we will be going over is what is an MEL, what is Provision 14 CFR 91.213, who needs an MEL and who does not, how to use an MEL, and how to operate an airplane with inoperable instruments. So to start off, we'll be going over the different maintenance forms and procedures, which include the M2, the M4, and the M5. Your M2 log is your typical aircraft discrepancy log that you see in the 172s that we fly. And when there is a problem with the aircraft or an inoperative piece of equipment or instrument is found, it is recorded in the M2. This enables the PIC to describe the issue, resulting in a mechanic coming out and fixing it, thus signing off on the issue in the log. You see that in the 172, you have to check it in the pre-flight checklist. The next is the M4. That is the deferred maintenance log. This tracks the deferral or postponing period of inoperative items. If a deferral is not cleared or prohibited within 100-hour TAC time after a deferral is filed or extended, flight in that aircraft is prohibited. If a pilot wants to defer a piece of inoperable equipment, they must make sure it is deferrable in accordance to the MEL and is listed in Chapter 2 of the MEL. The PIC must call maintenance via dispatch and get a maintenance deferral code from the MC to confirm the deferral of equipment. This code will be added to the M2 form in the appropriate box. Procedures with an M next to it state that only a mechanic can sign off on the discrepancy, and procedures with an O and an M are required to sign off by the operator and the mechanic on the deferral. The M5 is a placard. Inoperative equipment is posted or placarded in a visible area on the airplane dash. It contains the instrument's ATA code, 100-hour TAC, MDC code, the date, and the PIC signature. And this must be inputted by a mechanic himself. So 3 different times when MEL procedures must be followed in flight is the pre-flight, the post-engine start and takeoff, and in-flight. So in the pre-flight, we inspect the M2 and the M4 for discrepancies. We make sure discrepancies are signed off on or make sure flight meets operational limits with discrepancy. If the aircraft or any equipment is found to be damaged or inoperative during the pre-flight, it is to be recorded in the maintenance log and to be immediately looked at by maintenance. During the post-engine start / pre-takeoff, if inoperative equipment is discovered after engine start but before takeoff, the plane must be taxied back to ramp and turned off as soon as possible. Enter the discrepancy into the discrepancy log, or the M2, and call maintenance if necessary. But usually you would call maintenance just to make sure. And in flight, if equipment fails during flight, the PIC, who is in charge, decides whether the flight can or cannot be completed, and after landing, the discrepancy log will be logged, and the procedure found in 2.7.10, the flight ops manual, must be followed. So what is an MEL? A minimum equipment list is the specific document regarding inoperative equipment for a particular aircraft, be registration and serial numbers. For example, Cessna 172, November 701 Lima uniform. In other words, an MEL is a list of instruments and equipment and procedures that allows an aircraft to be operated all under certain conditions with certain equipment not working. So the MEL is based off of an MMEL, which is a master minimum equipment list, which is not for the specific aircraft like the MEL, based off of serial numbers and registration. The MMEL is basically a framework for an individual aircraft, such as just a Cessna 172 or a Piper Arrow. It contains a list of equipment and instruments that may be inoperative on certain aircrafts during certain flight conditions. Who is required to have an MEL? Any aircraft not operating under 14 CFR 91.213 is required to have an MEL on board the aircraft during flight. And there are two different types of MELs. There's the individual aircraft MEL, and this is regarding an individual aircraft by make, model, registration, and serial number. And then there's what we use at Liberty, which is a fleet MEL, regarding to a fleet of aircraft that share the same make and model. MEL tables are found in Chapter 2 of the Cessna 172 MEL manual, which can be found in the library on the School of Aeronautics page. So, going over the MEL itself, we start off with the ATA code, which identifies specific equipment and instruments within the MEL using chapter and section numbers. So the ATA code can be found right here. Next, we will talk about system sequence, number, and item. This identifies an operative equipment within the MEL table by name. So this is found right next to the ATA code, which is found right here, autopilot system. That shows the name of the system. Then next we have the number installed. This regards the quantity of the certain equipment or instrument that is installed in the aircraft. And that is found right here. Goes down. And you can see the one right here, that's the amount that's installed in the aircraft. So autopilot system, there's one in the 172. Next we go to the number required for dispatch. Now this number is the quantity of that specific equipment or instrument that needs to be working in order for the aircraft to be allowed to fly. So you see required for dispatch next to the number installed right here. So you do not need that to fly with the MEL. Finally, we have the remarks and procedures section. And this talks about certain situation conditions with some procedures. So there's two different types of procedures. There's the operation procedure, and conducted by the PIC, must be complied with prior to the equipment deferral. So the PIC must understand the issue and deal with it according to the MEL prior to the equipment deferral. And then there's also the maintenance procedure, which is an M, conducted by maintenance. They must be complied with before equipment can be deferred. And you see here, the M, O. It could also, the procedure could also have to be done by the PIC and maintenance worker. So you see remarks and procedures. Now, onto provision 14, CFR 91.213. 14 CFR 91.213 allows certain aircraft under certain operations and size to fly with inoperative equipment and without an MEL. Aircrafts that can fly without an MEL under Part 91 are non-turbine powered airplanes that have a maximum takeoff weight of 12,500 pounds or less, and also has a master MEL developed. Again, a master MEL is kind of the framework, a more generic MEL for a certain type of aircraft, such as Cessna 172 or a Piper Arrow, and also non-turbine powered airplanes for which an MEL has not been developed. So an MEL does not have to be developed for smaller airplanes in order to operate under 91.213. The inoperative instruments and equipment may not be part of the VFR day, which is 8 tomato flames, indicated as required on the aircraft's equipment list, so they can't be required on the essential equipment list, required by 14 CFR 91.205 or any other rule of 14 CFR Part 91 for the specific kind of flight operation being conducted. It is also required to be operational by an airworthiness directive. And if it is deemed that it has to be operational, then you can't fly when it is not. So that sums up what an MEL is, who needs it, what's 14 CFR 91.213, different types of logs, how to fly with an operative equipment that was gone over, and the different types of logs, how to log them, whether you need an MEL. So some questions to take home would be, what is an MEL? What 3 stages of flight do MEL procedures need to be taken? What is an M2, M4, and M5 form? And what are the 2 types of MELs? Thank you very much and have a great night.